Shalom, everyone. It's good to see you all. We are studying today Parshat Vayishlach, and this parsha is really extraordinary. I joke with that with all of these parshas is that they're the most important parsha. Every parsha is the most important parsha, except for next week, which is the really most important parsha, which is Vayeshev.
So are the others.
So are the other ones. Um, this parsha is about reconciliation. We've been working towards this for 2 weeks now in the story of Jacob and Esau. You recall, of course, Jacob stole the birthright from Esau. He stole the blessing from Esau. He runs away from his brother Esau because he is afraid of him. Esau is going to murder Jacob. That's what his mother overhears Jacob saying to himself. And last week, in last week's parsha, we saw that we encountered Jacob on his extraordinary departure with the dream scene and what exactly goes on in that scene. And what we didn't do in our class is really fill in all of the blanks. There's tremendous amount of material in last week's parsha, namely his arrival at the house of Lavan, his meeting with Rachel, his marriage to Leah before Rachel, and then his proliferate activity in making his family and building his wealth, and then the subsequent departure from Lavan. He's had his fill with Lavan, conflict, of course, and returns to Canaan. Lavan chases after him. I find one of the most important scenes there is Lavan catches up with Jacob, and at the point where they catch up, where he catches up to him, they really have the cathartic falling out with each other. It's the first time we really see Jacob with his pent up emotion, really telling Lavan what he really feels. It's at that point that they have a kind of rapprochement, meaning that they will form their own agreement and boundary and separate ways. That's where symbolically the text gives us the picture that they create a mound of stones. Jacob calls it Galed and Lavan calls it Yegar Sahaduta. And I often like to point out that moment where one is using one language and the other is using another language really identifies the divide, the boundary between the two peoples. The fact that he refers to it as in one name and the other is referred to it in the other name is profound. It's almost the same way that warring peoples will refer to certain places or certain battles by one name, and their opponents will refer to it by another name. But language and linguistic barriers, of course, indicate the ethnic boundary and the understanding that we are separate peoples. I say that only because I grew up with that kind of sense of boundary. And if you live in a multilingual society, even in Israel, and there are places where they don't speak Hebrew; they speak only Arabic. And in Canada, there are places where I grew up. My mother's here. You can travel 5 minutes from where I grew up, and you're immersed in a completely French atmosphere where nobody understands you. So it's not that true, but the point is that there are ethnic and linguistic divides here, and that is really what is separating the two of them. Jacob having lived with Lavan for 20 years, now he's returning, and of course, on his return, we know that there's tremendous anxiety facing him. He's really facing his past. He's got to confront the past and his brother. And that's what we're going to do today. I'm not going to do the wrestling scene because it's a very, very complicated scene where Jacob wrestles with the mysterious assailant. How that gets interpreted is really, a subject for many, many classes. What I want to do is study. It's going to amount to one verse, the verse of the reconciliation, the meeting of the two. And here I want to really put this verse under a microscope and show how it lines up with other scenes of reconciliation in the Torah, how the rabbis understood it, and for fun, I have a few paintings that I obviously don't know a lot about, but maybe by looking at them, you can interpret them as well. Given that here we are on a visual medium, I always feel compelled in these Zoom classes that to hold everyone's attention, we have to use some video. I was thinking of another scene, which I'll make reference to a little later, but here we go. We're going to do I'm going to do the text now, just to get you involved in the text. And if you have a chumash nearby, you might want to follow along with that. Otherwise, I'm going to use the screen. Okay, so now I'm going to share the screen. And here we go, share the screen. Boom. Okay, so this is called, Is This Kiss Just a Kiss? Right? You're going to hear da 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 da. And many of you are maybe familiar with the midrashim that I'm going to make reference to. But I want to set this up with the following texts, okay? And to give you the real emotions. So, Vayishlach Yaakov malachim lefanav. Jacob sent messengers ahead to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, and instructed them as follows. Thus shall you say to my lord Esau, thus says your servant Jacob, I stayed with Lavan and remained until now. I have acquired cattle, asses, sheep, and male and female slaves. And I send this message to my Lord in the hope of gaining your favor. The messengers returned to Jacob, saying, we came to your brother Esau. He himself is coming to meet you, and there are 400 men with him. Okay? So I just want to elaborate on this scene that we have Jacob and Esau. Jacob, we know, is a family man in the sense that he has a large family. 12 sons, 1 daughter, 4 wives, 2 real wives and 2 handmaiden wives, and a retinue of servants and animals and flocks and other possessions. And the picture that the Bible is giving us is of we would identify him today as a Bedouin clan, a nomadic clan. And the contrast can't be more striking, that Esau is a gang leader, a marauder, 400 people with him, is 400 men with him. 400 is not insignificant. 400 is the size of a battalion. So when we introduce the parsha in shul, I often like to say that here you have a family man, a domestic person, 4 women, and all the children, and who knows what else, flocks, etc., and all the details that go into making a family trip of that size. The different, and of course they're migrating back to Canaan, so they're coming with all their possessions and all of their stories and the things that we know of their experiences up until now. Not an insignificant amount of strife that exists. The rivalry between the wives and the we don't have a glimpse into the rivalry between the children right now. Of course, we know the end of the story, and the seeds of that rivalry are probably already there, right? And anyone who's taken a long trip with children, has probably heard more than once, are we there yet? Are we there yet? And that is, I can't imagine that in Jacob's caravan there weren't 1 or 2 children who said, when are we going to get there? Anyway, but Esau is it seems like there's a highly disciplined force with him. No women, no sense of family, and that contrast couldn't be stark. And of course, the Torah is presenting this contrast to us for the sake of understanding the moral difference between being a gang leader and a family person. The fact that Jacob issues a message to him, and which is quite elaborate, a narrative. Thus says your servant, right? I'm trying to, placate you, Esau. I'm your servant. Ko amar avdecha Yaakov, im Lavan garti va'achar ar at ad ata. I have lived with Lavan, remained there. So, if you've been wondering what's gone on for the last 20 years, that's where I've been. I've been with our uncle. And I have a small fortune, which I'm willing to share with you, to limtzo chen benecha, to find favor with you. And so the messengers come back, return to Jacob, saying, Banu el achicha el Esav. We came to your brother, to Esav, and he's coming to you. And so you don't have to be a biblical scholar to know the difference between an elaborate message that is encoded with a statement and a non-statement. I mean, today, even in diplomacy, we speak in diplomacy between, when nations speak in diplomacy, they'll speak with kind of coded references. When they don't answer, or when they answer with a kind of a non-answer, that's also a message, right? So the fact is that he has a non-verbal message to him. We came to your brother. He is coming to meet you. There are 400 men with him. It's the equivalent of hanging up the phone, right? There's no message here, and that is the moment between verse 7 and 8. So what would your response be if he hung up the phone and you're calling to reconcile, and there's no answer, or there's no response? You want to get a certain response. And so we get the sense here that Esau has a tremendous amount of power over his brother at this point. And thus Jacob was greatly frightened. In his anxiety, he divided the people with him and the flocks and herds and camel into two camps. So Vayira Yaakov me'od vayetzer lo. It's he has tsar, he has pain, anxiety. He's fearful and anxious, and he thinks if Esau comes to one camp and attacks it, the other camp may yet escape. So he goes. It's like taking two cars, and in case one, there's an accident, one half of the family will survive. And that's exactly how he's thinking, that there is the possibility that the entire family will be destroyed. So at least he tries to create a kind of scenario in which there will be survivors. And then he prays. And the prayer itself is extraordinarily moving. I'll make just a couple of comments on it. That Jacob said, "O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, return to your native land and I will deal bountifully with you. Shuv la'artzecha u'moladatecha ve'etiva imach." And then he says, "Katonti mikol hachasadim u'mikol ha'emet asher asita et avavdecha." I am unworthy of all the kindness that you have steadfastly shown your servant. And that has become a beautiful modern Israeli song. Katonti mikol hachasadim u'mikol ha'emet asher asita et avdecha. It's the sense that I am unworthy. I am unworthy of all of the things that you have done for me. And you get a real sense of genuine emotion here. Ki v'makli avarti et hayarden hazeh, because I crossed over the Jordan with my staff alone. V'tahayiti l'shnei machanot. And what is so powerful about this verse is that, if you recall, in the scene as Jacob is leaving, he has nothing. Even in the scene, where he dreams, we don't have a picture of a walking stick. But here he talks about Ki v'makli avarti et hayarden hazeh. I went over with my staff. I went over with my walking. I had nothing, and now I am two camps. And I interpret the makli is I went over with potential. I went over with potential. If you read the memoirs of immigrants, and we've talked about this because it's a very powerful theme that runs through these stories. I'm actually on a book on I'm listening to. It's called The Choice by her name is Dr. Ager. She's an interesting therapist writing about her survival. And again, it's the survivors come to America or immigrated to wherever they immigrated with absolutely nothing, literally nothing, having lost everything, and then they only had potential to um, to to um, to live and to survive and to be who they ended up becoming. And so that is the sense that we get here, the sense of potential. Edith Eger is her name. Katonti mikol hasidim. Hasileni na miyad achi miyad Esav. Save me, deliver me, verse 12, from my hand of my brother, from the hand of Esav. Ki arei anochi oto. I'm afraid of him. Bikeni em abanim. He will strike me down, mothers and children. Okay, and encoded within that verse is really a lot of information. First is Achi, my brother, and as I said many times, the book of Genesis is really trying to work the brother-sibling relationship out, and here is where that is being reflected. And the second is the Em al Banim, in the sense that we have a verse in Deuteronomy where you're not supposed to take the mother hen with the chicks. It's that same sense of cruelty, the commandment to send the hen before you take the eggs from the nest uses basically the same language. Lo tikarem al abanim, don't take the mother with the chicks. And so here we are framing Esau with a kind of cruelty that is at least in our own minds. There's obviously there are echoes of later rabbinic traditions that influence our understanding of this, but the fact is that he's coming without a family, and he has soldiers with him, and soldiers tend to be cruel, and they will kill everybody. Okay, and then Jacob says, "Yet you have said, I will deal bountifully with you and make your offspring the sands of the sea, too numerous to count." After spending the night there, he selected from what was at hand and presents his brother Esau. So he presents gifts to Esav, and it's a whole parade of different kinds of things, which we're not going to get into. Okay, so the scene then is pure fear, and he is afraid of what will confront him. He's afraid of violence, and he's afraid of the potential for not only violence, but complete and wanton and total destruction. Here's I skipped over a few verses, but do anybody have any questions or comments up until now? I can't see everybody, so you need to.
I'm looking at this as if I'm one of the characters, and if I were Jacob, I would be guilt-ridden about what I have done to this brother who is getting really bad press, but he's done bad things all the way through, and now he's fearful. He's fearful, but he never really registers guilt that he did something wrong, and that bothers me.
Well,
very good. Oh, yeah.
So
I agree 100%.
Okay, so we have
Ellie.
Yeah, we have a. Go ahead, Tov. I'm sorry, I don't see your face here.
No, I just want to say, Yaakov has been doing things from the time he was little, with or without help. Even first, his mother helps him to cheat, and then even when he takes away the flock from his in-law, he's got a trick. Now I don't understand the trick, So they give birth in a way that it'll benefit him. He's constantly devious, and he never really is sorry. He just tries to get away with it. I don't, and then of course he continues. And because of him, we end up in Egypt and we end up slaves. And yet he is the great father of our country, of our religion.
Well,
Please explain.
there's no question that he's a complicated individual. I mean, I think that the fact that we have a debate about his character and the remorse, the level of remorse, is simply a demonstration of the sophistication of the biblical story. Because I think it's possible, especially given what I just read here, which is the sense of humility that he has, that in fact he may be sorry for this. And I think there are other clues that he will demonstrate, including what he will do when he sees Esau. He will bow to Esau 7 times, and that indicates that he is inverting the blessing that was given to him, because in the blessing it's your brother will bow to you, and here he's bowing to his brother. So one of the questions that we can ask, and I think this is, both Ellie and Tova, your question, which is, is he the same old Jacob, or does he change? The second question is there anything genuine about him as he is presenting himself before Esau? Is the remorse genuine? So we can be divided on this question, as we should be. There is an element of tremendous suspicion that exists, and here this will concur with our own experiences of reconciliation, and it's hard not to project one's own human experiences on the text when you've had a falling out with another person, and here it's in the most extreme sense with your sibling. What does reconciliation mean, and is there a residue of suspicion in that reconciliation? Can there ever be, and I'm going to ask the psychologists here, can there ever be a true reconciliation? Social workers, psychologists, parents, or people who have lived life, all of you, do you think that there is such a thing as true reconciliation, or do you think that there is always a residue of something? Just let's take a little small poll.
I think it depends on the break. I mean, I have had clients who reconciled after 10 years of not speaking, but the thing that happened wasn't so drastic, insult. But here is a drastic thing. He took away his what is that?
The birthright and his blessing. Yes.
Yeah, that's a different level. I really think it depends on the level of the strife.
All right. Well, so there it's you would say, I'll put it into this frame, which is reconciliation is based on the level of hurt. It's based on the level of I guess the previous relationship, the prior before, and then it would be based on the genuine way that the parties attempt this, and their desire to move on, and all of those things I guess get tested in the moment of reconciliation, and certainly in the moments afterwards. There obviously are situations where people's relationships rupture beyond repair, and then of course there are places where they're easily repaired, and people can move on.
But you see here, they're not going to be living together. Well, so it's very nice. They won't be together. It's nice to reconcile, give a kiss, then you go away from each other, and you may never see each other again.
I think
you live in different countries or something.
There is a tremendous insight in that. Yes, that they do reconcile, but they also part. And it's not as if they have to see each other every year at Pesach. They have an annual gathering. with each other. They reconcile. You know, I should have put this. I was really hunting down different scenes of reconciliation. So I've made a mention of this before. When Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin reconcile at the Jerry Lewis telethon. Do you remember that moment?
Yeah.
It was a great moment. It's a very kind of sentimental moment, and it was Frank Sinatra who brought the two of them together. They had a stupid fight, and over the years, and after Dean Martin died, Jerry Lewis really regretted, all the years that they were away, and it was, stupid Hollywood, all that stuff. But they reconcile on camera, and they live separate lives. I mean, it's not as if they got
Right.
together again. That's kind of what it was. They were so close, and it was all about sentimentality. Here, it's obviously much more than sentimentality, because the two are related to each other, and one becomes the father of our people, the other becomes Esau, and with whom Israel will have encounters later on, and who becomes symbolic for other things in Jewish history. Okay, so let's take a look. Go ahead. Anybody else?
A little comment.
Go ahead.
That nothing to do with this, but the Torah never mentions that the family of Yaakov never bothered to find out how he was doing for 20 long years. I know the parents were already long and they couldn't travel maybe, but they could have sent a servant or somebody to find out. And then it repeats the same with Yaakov and Yosef. When Yosef was in Egypt and nobody from his family came to see how he was until when they needed the food, and then they came.
So I agree with you.
Not so nice.
I'm always stunned by it. To me, that remains one of the great puzzles of the Torah, in the sense that it's a question that I have never seen resolved nicely in commentaries, and that could mean the Torah just doesn't really bother with this, and it's not that the Torah overlooks this. It's just that I mean, the interpretation I would give to that is that's what pain is about, in relationships. The pain of fractured relationships is a pain that exists and is represented by the inability to communicate with one another, and the and no effort made to communicate. So there you have the same instance with Rebecca to Jacob. Rebecca never, the Torah never tells us that she sent a letter to him. It's left for people like us to invent these things. And the Torah never tells us that Joseph, in his seat of power, never sends a letter to or any kind of message to Jacob, when we know that this happened all the time. My favorite example of it is when Nahor has his family. It says, "Vayugad l'Avraham." It was told to Abraham about his brother Nahor. Well, Abraham is getting information about his brother back in Haran. Then there was, constant, messaging between family members. And here there was.
What about Sarah and Abraham? After the sacrifice, they didn't speak anymore.
There you go. So that no, he didn't even send her anything. Didn't I think that that relationship obviously was a very complicated relationship. They're not living together by the end of the story, and as soon as she dies, he's busy, shall we say, with another woman, and out comes several children. So it's clear that that there is a set of complications in that relation. I should say it's not clear. I think we can interpret that relationship is a complicated relationship. Okay, so let's go on with the next scene that I have here, which is, so they're about to see each other. This is after the wrestling. and I'm not going to spend time on that today. As I said, it's such a fascinating, complicated story, very complicated literarily, lots of things going on there in terms of, why is he wrestling? Who is he wrestling with? Is this God? Is this not God? Is, and all of the mythological strata of that story have puzzled scholars from day one. Here we are. Looking up, Jacob saw Esau coming, accompanied by 400 men. Vayisa Yaakov enav, vayar, v'nei Esau ba. V'imo arba meot ish, 400 men. Vayachatz et ha'yeladim al Leah v'al Rachel v'al shtei hashvachot. He split the maids, divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two maids, putting the maids and their children first, Leah and the children next, Rachel and Joseph last. He himself went on ahead and bowed low to the ground 7 times until he was near his brother. Esau ran to greet him. He embraced him, and falling on his neck, he kissed him, and they wept. So, V'avar lifnehem vayishtachu va'arza sheva pa'amim ad gishto ad achiv vayaratz Esav likrato vayichabkehu vayipol al tzavara vayishakehu vayivku. They hug, they embrace, they fall on each other's necks, and they kiss and they cry. It's remarkable emotional language for the Torah. Just a couple of notes here. The scene of organizing the people in this way, organizing the family this way, divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two maids, putting the maids and their children first. So the Torah doesn't tell us who it's Bilhah or Zilpah. We don't know if Zilpah preceded Bilhah or Bilhah preceded Zilpah. The two maids obviously have a subsidiary status to Leah and Rachel, and the Torah's message here is not opaque. They are secondary, the maid's children, and then it's Leah and her children, and Rachel and Joseph last. So why? It's because the most protected and the most beloved are at the end, and here the Torah it's already hinting to us what's happening in the future. And I mean, it's hard not to get, I don't want to say aggravated by this text, but here you have the seed of the rivalry that will be unfolding in the family in the next story. And the rivalry, of course, is that Joseph is the beloved, favored child. You would think that Jacob would have learned the lessons of Isaac and Abraham, but he doesn't. Joseph last, and that's because of Rachel. Rachel is the beloved wife, and so therefore there's protection and proximity that is the symbol of the closest love, the closest orbit of love. He himself went on ahead and bowed low to the ground 7 times until he was near his brother. And so this is the inversion of the blessing that Isaac gave to Jacob, that your brother will bow to you. And here he bows to his brother. And whether or not it is a succession of steps, bowing to the brother in one place. There's a folk tale I like to tell with, it's about taming the lion and how a lion gets tamed. And it's a rather interesting story. It goes like this, that the individual wants to get milk of a lioness, and in order to procure the milk from a lioness, he has to divide, because that has potent magical powers, healing powers. He has to find a way to tame the lioness. So he takes 7 sheep, and the first day he stands outside the lion's den, and he throws a sheep in, and of course the lion eats the sheep. The second day he takes another step further in, and he throws the second sheep in, and the lion eats it. The third day he takes another step in and he throws it in. By the seventh day, he's already close enough to the lion to take milk from her. And this is my folktale imagination here. I imagine that in taming the wrath of his brother, he is not staying stationary, that he gets up, he bows, takes a step, he gets up, he bows, he takes up, he gets a step, etc. That would be an unnecessary detail for the Torah to put in, but if I were writing a commentary on it, I would cite the folktale and say that the possibility exists here. Behu avar lifnehem means he doesn't do it in one location. He does it in several locations and does it to draw nearer to him, because his brother is a wild animal kind of person and needs to be tamed. In addition, what I didn't elaborate on was the parade of gifts to the brother seems to be quite extraordinary. In the past, I've commented on the relationship between male and female animals in the parade of the gifts, and that the relationship of the male to the female is at a very, very high fractions. In other words, there's one male to every 10 females, and that is it's not even a subliminal message of prowess to his brother. So he's trying to placate his brother through his projection of his male virility, and he's trying to placate his brother on the basis of this subsequent or sequence of bowings. But the key verse is verse 4. Vayaratz Eitzav vayikrato vayepchabkehu vayipol atzavarav shekehu. Esau ran to greet him, embraced him, and falling on his neck, he kissed him, and they wept. The Torah has taken us into the emotional life of Jacob, but it has not taken us into the emotional life of Esau. Except for this verse, and except for the hint in his non-reply to Jacob, they wept is the only indication that there's emotion here. So what are the possibilities in interpreting Esau and his feelings here? Well, for this we need to explore some different moments of reconciliation.
Rabbi,
yes, go ahead.
just wanted to ask a question. In that last verse, there's a word that has all the dots above that.
That's what we're going to focus on. Okay?
About a half-hearted or wholehearted kiss or something.
That's correct. That's what we're going to focus on. That's the midrash, and that's coming up. Hold on to that. So this is a previous scene where Jacob meets Lavan, and there's similar language. Here, notice Vayichabkehu and Vayivku. I'm sorry, Vayichabkehu and Vayishakehu, hugging and kissing. And even in English, hugging and kissing is a pair, right? We use that as a phrase of speech. Here we have the same. And Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of his uncle Laban, the flock of his uncle Laban. Jacob went up, rolled the stone of the mouth, watered the flock of his uncle Laban. Then Jacob kissed Rachel, Vayishak Yaakov Rachel, Vayisad Kol Avayim. So it tells us he kissed her. It doesn't tell us that he hugged her. And the reason why it tells us that he kissed her and didn't hug her is because you can get away with a kiss without a hug. But if you hug and a kiss, that already is a little risque. That's too much personal space here. I even think that the kissing going on here between Jacob and Rachel is a little too much, but it plays on there's a lot of wordplay here between Vayishak and Vayashket Hatzon, watering and kissing. That's what's going on here. But look what happens when Lavan comes, verse 12, 13. Jacob told Rachel that his father came to him, that he was Rebekah's son. She ran and told her father. 13. On hearing the news of his sister's son, Laban ran to greet him. Vayaratz likrato, vayichabek lo, vayinashek lo, vayavi'eu abito. So he hugs him, vayinashek lo, he kisses him. And very, sensitive readers of the text will say, oh, there's a difference here between Lavan and Esau. In this case, I'm just going to go up again. It's vayichabkehu, vayishakehu, and here it is vayichabek lo, vayinashek lo. So one commentator points out the fact that there is a little more tentativeness in Lavan and Yaakov than there is between Esau and Yaakov. The fact that it's one word, vayichabkehu, that it's
Oto and lo. It's
exactly.
Oto
It's
and
the,
lo.
the word compresses, so the word itself is giving you a sense of the love between them, but the vayichabek lo, the fact that there are two words here, gives us a sense that there's quite a bit of distance between the two of them, and the rabbis make a point of saying that Lavan was frisking Jacob when he was kissing him and hugging him, because when Eliezer, the uncle's, his father's servant, came to meet him, he came with all sorts of gifts. So he's like, he's hugging him and he's checking his pockets at the same time. Okay. Here's another beautiful scene of reconciliation. We'll probably study this. Joseph, when he meets the brothers finally, sorry, it's a spoiler alert. Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, have everyone withdraw from me. So there was no one else about when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. His sobs were so loud that the Egyptians could hear. And so the news reached Pharaoh's palace. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph, is my father still well? But his brothers could not answer him, so dumbfounded were they on account of him. Then Joseph said to his brothers, come forward to me. And when they came forward, he said, I am your brother Joseph, he whom you sold to Egypt. Now do not be distressed or reproach yourselves because you sold me hither. It was to save life that God sent me ahead of you. It is now 2 years that there has been famine in the land. Verse 8, verse 9, now hurry back. God has made me the Lord of all Egypt. Come back without delay. And then here, verse 14. With that, Vayipol al Tzavrei Binyamin Achiv. He embraced his brother. It's literally, he falls on the neck of his brother Benjamin and he cries. And then, Vayinashek lechol echav. He kisses all his brothers. Vayef alehem ve'acharechin dabru echav ito. So the text tells us that he kisses them, and it doesn't say that he embraces them. And that is why I would say, I asked the question before, is reconciliation, and is there, under the microscope of human emotions, do we have a residue of suspicion or animosity or hate left between the brothers? And I would be much more, I would be less reticent in saying that the animosity still exists between the brothers and Joseph than between Esau and Jacob. It just seems to me that there is a much more genuine reconciliation between Jacob and Esau than there is between Joseph and the brothers, because, and this we'll get into in a couple of weeks, Joseph puts his brothers through hell. And it's hard not to interpret Joseph as being rather cruel and vengeful. And when you are the recipient of someone's cruelty and vengefulness, not hard to let that go so easily. Okay, one more. This is the meeting of Joseph and Jacob. He had sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to point the way before him. So when they came to the region of Goshen, Joseph ordered his chariot and went to Goshen to meet his father Israel. He presented himself to him, embracing him around the neck. He wept on his neck a good while. And here, vayipol al tzavarav, vayefk al tzavarav od. So this is pretty emotional. It's all about the neck here. There's no hugging here either, but there's just too much, a lot of English can't translate vayipol al tzavarav, vayefk al tzavarav well. It means to fall on your neck, to cry on your neck. Not a good way to interpret it. Let's go to Rashi, and Rashi will give us what we've been looking for. So Ve'echabkehu, he embraced him. His pity was aroused when he saw him prostrating sometimes. That's nitgalgelu rachamav. He was very moved. And so we're taking the text at face value that he was moved. And then Bob's question. Dots are placed above the letters of this word. So you notice in the text and in the Torah itself, when it comes to this word, Vayishakehu,
Okay.
the dots are on this word. Why dots are on letters and words in the Torah is a long subject of discussion. Probably has to do with mistakes in the text and the way that scribes by convention highlighted a mistake or tried to replace things. The addition to other kinds of scriptural ephemera in the text, larger letters, smaller letters, misspellings. These are all phenomena that have to do with the textual tradition in a scribal tradition. What does it say here? Dots are placed above the letters of this word, and a difference of opinion is expressed as to what these dots are intended to suggest. Some explain that dotting as meaning that he did not kiss him with his whole heart. Whereas Rabbi Shimon, son of Yochai, said, is it not well known that Esau hated Jacob? But at the moment, his pity was really aroused, and he kissed him with his whole heart. So here, the rabbis are trying to reconcile the reconciliation with their reality. The reality that they experience is that, I'm going to say it in this way, because they are dealing with persecution and anti-Semitism in a way that only people who have experienced anti-Semitism without reconciliation can say. Once an anti-Semite, always an anti-Semite, period. And that's what Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai is saying. He says, Halacha hi biyadua she'esav soneh liYaakov. That this is a feature of reality, that the anti-Semite will always hate the Jew no matter what. It's a stark piece of reality based on human experience. However, as we can imagine, there's a difference of opinion here. I'm just going to give you a different source to this from Breshit Rabbah, from the Midrash. He says, Esau ran to greet him, embraced Jacob, he kissed him. The word kissed is dotted. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, a different rabbi, said, every place you see more letters than dots, you interpret the letters. More dots than letters, you interpret the dots. Here, the letters are no more than the dots, and the dots are no more than the letters. They're equal. However, it teaches that Esau felt compassion in that moment and kissed Jacob with all his heart. Rabbi Yanai said, if so, why is kiss dotted? On the contrary, it teaches that Esau came not to kiss Jacob, but to bite him. But our ancestors' neck became like marble, and that wicked man's teeth were blunted. Hence, and they wept, teaches that Jacob wept because of his neck, and Esau wept because of his teeth. So we have two fundamental views here. One is that the emotion was real, that Esau is coming with real emotion, and that because the dots are on the letters and they're equal, they cancel each other out, and that you shouldn't really interpret more in this than is actually written, that there is emotion as we can, the text is setting us up for emotion and a catharsis, and that they will meet each other, and in fact, he kisses him and it's real. His motion, he's able, and this is in a way the greatness of Esau at this moment, he's able to set aside all of that past hatred and animosity and really love his brother and kiss his brother. They can't give it up. Rabbi Yanai can't give it up. and here he's saying it's not that at all. The dots indicate a scriptural tradition that the text wanted to say something else. And the word linashek is vaguely similar to linashech. Linashek and linashech. Linashko and linashko. And it says here that there's a bit of violence in every act of love, right? That the act of kissing is really a way of it's masks the deeper desire of biting him. I was looking for analogies of this in film, and you'll thank me for not giving you the scene from The Silence of the Lambs here, in which the Anthony Hopkins character, in trying to escape, places his mouth over the guard and bites out his teeth. I mean, it's a horrible scene. Even saying it is terrible. Okay, but the point is, and maybe there are other examples in film. I just don't have enough of a film literacy to show this. That you know there is aggression here. It's an aggression moment, a moment of aggression, and miraculously, what happens is Jacob's neck turns to marble, and Esau breaks his teeth, and Jacob's skin is pierced. And the deep psychological truth here is that in the aggression and in the science fiction defense that Jacob is mounting here, everyone is scarred and there's pain. The pain that Esau is defeated in that moment, and the pain that Jacob will have a residual scar from the puncture of his neck, which is not serious. It's totally serious. Okay, so we can. I want to show you this because this is the way that the rabbis are trying to take the scene and really open up the emotional layers here. I want to give you this next comment from Abraham ibn Ezra, who lives at the same time roughly as Rashi, but comes from a different interpretive tradition, much more rational tradition, a much more, I guess, skeptical, philosophical. And here's what he says, and you'll appreciate the humor in this. The midrashic interpretation of the dots on top of the word, quote, and he kissed him, Vaishakeu, is good for those who have just been weaned. But according to a straightforward interpretation, Esau did not plan to do evil to his brother. And the proof is, Vayivku, they cried, which is also used in the context of the reunion between Joseph and his brothers. In Hebrew, the Ibn Ezra's Hebrew is so beautiful. Vayishakeu, tov hu la'atike mishedin ki al derech hapshat lo chashav Esav lasot ra. And what he's referring to is everybody knows this midrash. Why? Because rabbis, we get up in front of our congregations, we like to tell stories. It's a great story to tell, that exactly the way I've told it, which is that it responds to a certain reality that human beings have in reconciliation and victims have with their oppressors, which is you are always suspicious of your former oppressor, no matter how much they have done to try and reconcile. Okay, there is no way that in any situation of reconciliation where there has been oppression and victims, that it can be completely and totally, starting on a new page. There's always a memory of something. Okay, and that's true, from the most, naive and simple kinds of experiences to the much more complicated and painful and violent and destructive ones. But Ibn Ezra is saying, look, don't read into it anything. This is obviously, this is a childish notion. There's a real. It's what you see is what you get. This is not, they had their 20 years. They're brothers. They understand, and that's that. Don't make into it more than what it is. Okay? I'm going to give you a couple of other comments. This is Yair Jakovich, who wrote this book. I mentioned it last week. Okay. Jacob gathers his courage. He passed before them and bowed to the ground 7 times until he was near his brother. This man who stole the blessing and gave him command over his brothers, be master of your brothers and let your mother's sons bow to you, now bows 7 times before Esau to atone for his past aggressions. Perhaps it was this display of obeisance, or perhaps Esau's intentions were already peaceful and Jacob had misinterpreted things wrongly, viewing Esau as heading up a militia. In any case, Esau has forgiven his brother, his rage forgotten over the 20 years that have passed since they last saw one another. And Esau ran towards him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. The brothers burst into tears, their emotions at their long overdue reunion overwhelming them. For Jacob, at least, these must have also been tears of relief and release from tension. These two, who had last met as young men, now see themselves in one another, acknowledge the changes that have transpired. It is not only the lines on their faces that have increased. Each man brings with him knowledge earned through hard experience. Experience is not shared by the other. I think, again, Jakovich is making a very insightful comment here. And I think for me, I would highlight the following thing, which is each see themselves in one another. That would be this line here. Oh, it's never mind. They see themselves in one another. And here it is. They see themselves in one another. And that's, the essence of conflict is that you are engaged with part of yourself in the other. I'm going to give you this comment. This is Dennis Prager in his new commentary. Esau ran to greet him. He embraced him, and falling on his neck, he kissed him, and they wept. The age-old maxim, time heals all wounds, seems to have been in operation here. Both Esau and Jacob were overcome with sincere affection and emotional catharsis. Esau was not a bad man, and the Torah never portrays him as such. It is true, Esau did not care about spiritual matters, and he was a gruff man of the earth. But the Torah never depicts him as mean-spirited. Moreover, he was a devoted son, which in my book, and more importantly, this book, counts for a lot. Honoring one's parents is one of the 10 commandments. In addition to reacting to this emotional moment, reuniting with his only sibling after 20 years, Jacob's tears must have been at least partially out of profound relief, as his brother's greeting was one of familial love, not hostility or worse, violence. So Dennis Prager, like Jakovich, giving Esau the benefit of the doubt and really giving Esau a tremendous sense of courage and of maturity here, and simplicity, and giving him credit. This is a dutiful son. This is a person who himself has been wounded by the 20-year absence of his brother, despite the fact that he wanted to kill his brother before. And that's the level of complexity here that is solved by this moment. And lastly here, so this is Richard Elliott Friedman here. His comment fell on his neck. Jacob deceived his father and displaced Esau by putting skins on the smooth part of his neck. Then there was a hint that Esau would be compensated for his loss one day by the use of the metaphor that you'll break his yoke from your neck. And now the reconciliation between the twins is conveyed as Esau runs and embraces the neck. So the neck plays an important literary role here in all of this. So what we're left with here is a sense that this reconciliation is complicated. The dots on the text are in some way, they come from a strong scriptural tradition that may or may not have anything to do with the commentaries that we have just given. But the fact that it is so easy to detect in this moment a sense of the complicated nature of the experience tells us that it is common. I want to do something else here. Just I know we're over, but I just pulled up before we started some artistic depictions of this, and here are a couple of things in paintings. Okay, this is James Tissot. Okay, and we have the meaning here. Now, I think that this is an extraordinary picture because who's who here?
You could tell.
The red hair is Esau. The one that has red hair.
The one who's red hair is Esau. He's got the men behind him. Okay, and here, I'm sorry. So this is the family on the right, and the two are on the left. So the painting is, you got nice landscape in the background. It's clear that the artist knew the exact locale, because this is if you go to the Jordan Valley, this is kind of what it looks like. And you have the camp and these guys underneath here. All right. And and here is children. They're weary. They have no shoes on. And the two of them, and what's his expression?
Yeah, that's an expression.
His expression is suspicion. Okay.
Right.
I'm really saying suspicion. All right, let's take a look at this one. This artist is this is Raffaellino Botella. Okay, I know this stuff. And here's Jacob on the left and Esau on the right. Okay, with soldier-clad gang members here, and the two. This is as good as I can get here. The hands are together. Esau is reaching. The hands are inside. There's a sword here. There's a child here, and again, there's tremendous amount going on here. Let's do another one.
Nobody's smiling. Nobody's happy.
Nobody's smiling. There's no. Okay. Sorry. Getting a little bit of a survey. Sorry.
But also in that first picture you showed, it was like the good guys are all dressed in white, right?
Okay, great. Okay. Here is another. This is not coming in very well. This is Gerrit Blecker, I guess. And you have a very cloudy scene here. The family on the right and the gang on the left. It's not a particularly good reproduction here. And this here is another George Frederick Watts, 19th century. Okay. And look at the picture. Look at the way, look at the faces. This is highly, here, Esau, there's a lot of genuine feeling here. And the fact, look at how the coloration of his skin. Look at Jacob is pale. He's scared to death, literally. All right, and the background, just is the information, and the masculinity, the body, etc. The weapons. Okay, and what's expressed in the arm here is pushing and pulling at the same time. All right, that's another one here. This is another ancient one. This is doesn't here is more placating. This is Jacob and Esau, and I think I have one more. It's back to this very kind of pious looking. This who is who here? Jacob. This must be Jacob because maybe not. This is the here are the families. So this is Jacob on this side, Esau on this side, or maybe wrong. Maybe
No, I don't think so, because Jacob looks like a rabbi and Esau has red hair.
Jacob is with a beard.
Jacob,
Yes,
how
I
many?
agree.
Yeah, these are the soldiers here. Okay, and these must be other kids. So that many? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 children around here. Okay, who else is going here? And look, they're all back here. That's the family.
That's the
All right. So these pictures, these paintings are very, very
They're wonderful.
interesting. They're very interesting. They convey a sense of the complexity of these moments, right? Especially, we'll go back to this one here. This scene is this is really the best, in my opinion.
Yes.
Look, he's the most modern of all of them, James T. So I don't know enough about the artist, but it's clear, as I said, that he knew the surroundings pretty well, and he's depicting. Look at these. He's given Esau a little paunch here, and the hair, and there's a slobbering quality to the kissing here, and the suspicion in the hand over his head. You know, the kind of embrace that
Yeah.
you would see in the world wrestling. You know, it's like I'm taking you by the hand. You know, and it's I'm pawing you, is in a way that I think that is a remarkable depiction of the complexity, and of course the narrative of the family. They look like they just came from Ethiopia. I mean, you know, exaggeration. Okay. So there you have it. How complicated this is. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, just a question, a comment, along with the idea of reconciliation. To what degree do you believe this is an archetype or sort of a pre-Teshuvah way of how people come together and what is and isn't appropriate Teshuvah? Because as I look at the rest of the Parsha with the rape of Dinah and other things going on, it's all about the boundaries of violence and interpersonal conflict, which get much more granular in this. And so I'm just wondering, where does Teshuvah fit in to the reconciliation process?
I think it's really central to the reconciliation process. You know, I want to read it like Ibn Ezra read it, which is that the motives are genuine. Jacob has a motive here, which is he needs to move on with his life. He needs to. God has been promising him the land and the family, and they need to get settled. And it's a long time coming, and it has to be genuine. And this, in addition to the wrestling before, the wrestling reflects also the attempt to come to terms with past. So this is as close as you're going to get to Teshuvah as possible. The fact that it's linked, you know, consequentially to the story that you mentioned, the rape of Dinah, only suggests that Jacob is not going to have an easy time of it. It's interesting that the fulcrum of this story is the verse Vayavo Yaakov Shalem. Jacob arrives Shalem to the city of Shechem. Shalem means he arrives whole, in the sense that he has probably managed to establish a new page in his life, except for the fact that from that moment, everything goes downhill. The beginnings of the internal fraternal conflicts exist. The rape of Dinah ensues, and then we are teed up for the next, you know, central story, which is the brothers and the attempted fratricide and the sale of Joseph to slavery. Doesn't get much worse than that. We've said many times, you know, in different contexts, what does a parent want? A parent wants the children to get along with each other. That there is no greater blessing for a parent than when your children get along. And frankly, there's no greater curse for a parent when your children do not get along. So here, there is a moment of tranquility when Jacob and all of his family are together. But that is short-lived. And that even though the attempt, he has reconciled and he has done whatever he could in terms of teshuvah, it doesn't last.
And it's not a tshuva shlema. It's not a whole, full repentance. It's just up to a certain point, but not the last stage of repentance.
So I give this little talk because we have the word shlema.
Yeah.
You know, we have refuah shlema, emunah shlema, teshuvah shlema, geula shlema in the prayers. You know, it says, hashivenu b'teshuvah shlema lefanecha, bring us to a perfect repentance. I believe with perfect faith. give me a perfect healing. And I often remark that, is there such a thing as a perfect anything? Can you have a perfect healing? When you break a leg, when you have a surgery, you have a scar. There's no way to cover that up. And the scar means that there's a remnant of what was. Do you ever recover perfectly from things? Yeah, well, we'll leave that unanswered. It's Shlema is an aspirational statement rather than a definitive statement. Any other questions? Any comments?
I'd also say it's interesting that both the thigh and the neck are involved in this parsha. I'm not quite sure if that has any meaning, but
Well, it does have meaning. It does have tremendous meaning. Jacob, has the moment with the assailant in which the assailant injures him. And that injury will leave a permanent mark on him. He will be wounded for the rest of his life. He will walk with a limp. And because of that, the tradition ensues that we do not eat the sinew on the thigh bone. It's gid hanasheh. That is the recollection of this moment through the dietary laws that recalls this moment. And you could say that every encounter, every kind of wrestling match leaves its own wound. And if you watch World Wrestling, you'll know what I mean. Go ahead, Ruth.
I just wanted to make a comment toward this perpetual hatred. It was only a couple of weeks ago that we had Kristallnacht, and our speaker was the Consul General from Germany. And the whole attitude that Germany has now, they really do accept blame. They're not trying to escape it. And okay, I'm only the child of survivors. We have survivors here in this group, so I don't know how you feel about it. But I think teshuva is possible. And so that's as far as the Germany thing goes. I mean, I think we had him as a speaker because of what Germany's doing now vis-a-vis Jews in Israel, and lots of Israelis live in Germany, and lots of Russian Jews live in Germany. And the other thing is Esau representing, the Arab population or the Roman population. Israel's now, there's so much progress toward peace with Muslim countries that even if we can't have a shlema, a shalom shlema, at least if we could have peaceful coexistence, which is not the same thing as everybody's best friends, but I don't think it has to be shlema. I think it just has to be coexistence.
So both of those examples are really, really extraordinarily important examples. And yes, one did get the sense, and from the presentation, and I've been at many of these, where certainly official diplomatic gestures from modern Germany is all about that, and I have no doubt that those individuals are have all of the most important sense of responsibility and motivation behind it. The reason, though, that they do is because when you go behind closed doors with individuals such as them, and I know about this, they are deeply concerned about the sense in the population. There is an impulse within the population of Germany, that doesn't take responsibility, and that is anti-Semitic, and that is, that available to neo-Nazi sympathy, and the diplomacy and through state policy sense a tremendous amount of responsibility to quell that, and they really do feel so. It as usual, an idea such as reconciliation, especially when it comes to nations, these big ideas are fragmented in a population, and every part of the population has a piece of that idea. They may be demonstrating the sense of total genuineness and total responsibility, when in fact there are, and there does exist within Germany today, both sentiments for of sympathy for National Socialism and Nazi past, and of course anti-Semitism. I mean, you saw it in events. It's there for everybody. With regard to the Arab world, it's the same thing. The same thing. Dubai and Bahrain and United Emirates, they get it. They understand that their future is linked to Israel's future, because they share the same geography and the same enemies, and the same, technological advancements can benefit both. They're mature enough to realize this. But there are many people in those populations that don't share that. Tova, say it.
I just want to say there is a committee that I was interviewed by 2 weeks ago. They came to my house, in fact, during this terrible COVID period, made up of German from the reparations, the people who started the reparations in apparently 72 years ago, and the Jewish organization that has the reparations. It's a committee working together as a team, the Jews and the Germans, and they interviewed people like my age, trying to find out whether having the reparations for so many years, whether that has helped me in some way to soften myself to the perpetrators. The interview was an hour long, and the woman who's doing it is traveling all over, I think, Russia and Israel and America, interviewing people. She was the one who made the movie called Who Will Tell Our Story,
Oh, yeah.
something like that. And I told her how I felt, and she felt that most people my age, the reparations have not softened us on any level. In fact, in a way, the opposite.
Yeah, you're buying me
Because when she says when people open up their reparation checks, the first thing they remember is the perpetrators. It's not that we say, "Oh, great, I have money now." No, it's a reminder every month. I know it is for me, and I know it is for other people too.
So it's
an interesting thing.
You can see that the as I say here, the resonance of this theme is not difficult to see. It does. It's why the Bible speaks to us on so many levels. We relate to it personally, but these are symbolic of larger and much more complicated experiences that each of us has, and of course survivors have had in a much more demonstrative way.
Okay.
All right, with that, we will leave it there. Thank you so much, everyone. It's great to see you all.